7 professional dog trainers. We asked them the same question off the record. Not on camera, not with a brand deal in their pocket, just straight up, harness or collar. And here's what's wild. Almost every single one of them gave a different answer in private than what they post online. So what's actually going on? Why is there such a gap between what trainers say publicly and what they actually strap onto their own dogs every single morning? That's exactly what we're getting into today. And by the end, you'll know how to cut through the noise and make the right call for your dog. If you've spent any real time down the rabbit hole of dog gear, you already know how exhausting this debate gets. One video tells you harnesses cause shoulder problems. The next one says collars are dangerous and irresponsible. There are trainers on social media who speak about this stuff with the confidence of someone reading from a holy text, and yet they completely contradict each other. Meanwhile, you are standing in the pet store aisle, holding a no-pull harness in one hand and a flat collar in the other, and your dog is staring up at you like, "Can we just go home?" Here's the reality. Most of the content you've seen on this topic is shaped by brand partnerships, training methodology tribalism, and honestly, a little bit of ego. Nobody wants to publicly admit that the answer is nuanced, that it depends. Because it depends doesn't get clicks, doesn't sell a course, and doesn't build a following. But that's actually the truth. And the 7 trainers we spoke to, all with real working experience, dogs in the field, actual clients, they all circled back to the same underlying logic, even when their surface-level answers looked different. We're going to break all of that down today. What the debate is actually about, what the gear really does, what those trainers privately told us, and how you can use that to make a smarter, more confident decision for your specific dog. Let us start with why this debate exists at all, because it didn't always. For most of dog training history, collars were the default. That was just the thing you put on a dog. Flat collar, slip lead, maybe a choke chain if you were in that world. Harnesses were for working dogs, sled dogs, service animals, dogs doing a job that required pulling. The idea of putting a regular pet dog in a harness for a neighborhood walk wasn't really part of the mainstream conversation. Then 2 things happened almost simultaneously. The positive reinforcement movement grew, and with it came a real, legitimate concern about pressure and pain around the neck. And the pet industry exploded. Suddenly, there were 100 harness designs on the market, each promising to solve all your problems. Back clip, front clip, dual clip, no pull, anti-anxiety, step-in, overhead. The variety became overwhelming. And with that variety came marketing. And with that marketing came the very loud, very confident messaging that harnesses are always better, always safer, always more humane. And that's where the debate got messy, because the nuance got lost. So let us actually talk about what these pieces of gear do mechanically, not emotionally. A flat collar sits around your dog's neck. When pressure is applied from a leash or from your dog pulling, that pressure concentrates on the trachea, the cervical vertebrae, and the surrounding soft tissue. For a dog that walks nicely on a loose leash, this is essentially a non-issue. The collar just holds the ID tags and does nothing else. But for a dog that pulls hard and consistently, that repeated pressure on the neck is a real concern. There's legitimate research linking chronic collar pressure to thyroid disruption, eye pressure increases, and tracheal damage over time. Not from wearing a collar, from pulling against one. A harness, on the other hand, distributes pressure across the chest and torso. Much larger surface area, much less concentrated force. This is why harnesses tend to be the go-to recommendation from vets and force-free trainers. For a dog that pulls, the harness is genuinely less likely to cause physical harm. But here's where it gets interesting. And this is the part the harness marketing doesn't tell you. Short Starte harness doesn't teach a dog not to pull. It just makes pulling more comfortable for the dog. And in some cases, specifically back clip harnesses, it actually activates something called the opposition reflex. That's a physiological response where a dog instinctively pushes forward against pressure from behind. It's the same reason sled dogs wear harnesses. You're literally clipping the leash to the place that makes pulling feel most natural to the dog. So if you've ever put your dog in a back clip harness, thinking it would help with pulling, and then watched your dog drag you down the street like you are training for a sprint, that's why. The gear was working exactly as designed. Just not the way you hoped. Short-end front clip harnesses are different. When you clip the leash to the front of the chest, pulling causes the dog to redirect sideways. They turn toward you instead of continuing forward. It doesn't stop pulling through any kind of correction. It interrupts the mechanics of pulling. And for a lot of dogs, especially ones in active training, that interruption is genuinely useful. It creates a moment, a pause. And in that pause, you can reinforce the behavior you actually want. Okay, so that's the gear itself. Now let us get to the off-the-record stuff. We spoke to 7 professional trainers, people doing this work every day. Some run training classes, some do private behavior modification. Some work with dogs that have serious aggression or reactivity issues. We asked each of them the same thing. What do you actually put on your own dog, and what do you actually recommend behind closed doors? Here's the pattern we found. Every single trainer who publicly advocates for harnesses only, as in, harnesses across the board for every dog, privately admitted they use a collar on at least one of their own dogs. Everyone. Not because they are hypocrites, but because their own dog has good leash manners. A dog with a solid loose leash walk doesn't need a harness for safety reasons. The collar is just a collar. And on the flip side, every trainer who publicly leans toward collar-based training, who might be a little dismissive of harnesses in their content, privately acknowledged that for a new dog, a dog in a new home, or a dog that's still learning, a front clip harness is a reasonable, sensible starting point. So what's the actual consensus? Here it is, as plainly as we can put it. The gear should match the dog's current behavior and the human's current training capacity. That's it. That's the whole thing. If your dog pulls hard, and you are not yet in a position to train a reliable loose leash walk, whether that's because you are new to training, because you have a physical limitation, because your dog is large and strong, or just because you are in the early stages, a front clip harness is a practical, humane tool that reduces physical risk and keeps the walk manageable while you work toward something better. If your dog walks nicely or is in active training with a skilled handler, a flat collar is completely fine. There is nothing inherently wrong with a collar on a dog that isn't putting chronic pressure on it. If you are dealing with a dog that has significant reactivity or strength, and you need both safety and some mechanical advantage, a dual-clip harness that lets you use both a front and back attachment gives you options and flexibility. The trainers we spoke to also flagged some specific things to watch for with harnesses, because this is where the marketing really falls apart. Fit matters enormously. A harness that doesn't fit properly can actually restrict shoulder movement. The front of the harness should sit on the sternum, not across the upper chest near the shoulder joint. If the harness straps cross over the point of the shoulder, you are potentially interfering with your dog's natural gait. This is a real issue, and it is why some orthopedic vets are now raising concerns about poorly fitted harnesses. Not harnesses in general, poorly fitted ones. So if you are going to use a harness, take the time to fit it correctly. Quality also matters. The cheap nylon harnesses that are everywhere online, the ones with a single strap across the chest, tend to be either too tight or too loose. They twist out of position, and they are harder to adjust. Spending a little more on a well-constructed harness with multiple adjustment points isn't just about durability. It's about actually getting the benefits the harness is supposed to provide. And here's something almost nobody talks about. Some dogs hate harnesses, not because they are uncomfortable, but because putting one on involves a lot of physical handling, and some dogs are sensitive about that. If your dog shuts down, freezes, or struggles every time you try to put the harness on, that's worth paying attention to. A collar that your dog can step into with zero fuss might be better for your relationship and your dog's emotional state, even if a harness would theoretically be a better tool on paper. Short start, here's the thing about dog gear that nobody wants to say out loud. No piece of equipment is a substitute for training. A no-pull harness doesn't teach your dog to walk nicely. A prong collar doesn't teach your dog to walk nicely. What teaches your dog to walk nicely is repetition, consistency, clear feedback, and time. The gear either supports that process or it doesn't. It helps or it gets in the way. But the training is always the variable that matters most. The trainers who told us this off the record, they're not saying it publicly because their audience wants a product recommendation, not a philosophical statement. But it is the truth. Short end, so where does that leave you practically? If you have a puppy or a new adult dog just coming into your home, start with a well-fitted front clip harness and a flat collar with ID tags. Use the harness for walks while you are building the behavior. Use the collar for identification and for short, controlled interactions where you know your dog isn't going to pull. As your dog's loose-leash walking improves, and it will with consistent work, you'll naturally find yourself relying on the harness less. That's actually the goal. You do not want to be managing your dog with gear forever. You want the gear to be a bridge, not a permanent solution. If you have a dog that's already pulling hard, and you've tried multiple harnesses without improvement, that's a signal that you need to shift focus to training mechanics rather than gear mechanics. A trainer who can watch you walk your dog and give you real-time feedback will do more for your leash manners than any piece of equipment ever could. And if someone online, trainer, influencer, brand ambassador, anyone, tells you that one type of gear is objectively right for every dog in every situation, that's your cue to keep scrolling. Because that's not training wisdom. That's a sales pitch. The harness versus collar debate has stayed alive for so long because it gives people something concrete to argue about, something to buy, something to feel right about. But the dogs that walk beautifully on a loose leash, they're not wearing magic gear. They have owners who put in the work. That's the part that's less marketable, but it is the only part that's actually true. So if you've been going back and forth on this, harness, collar, no pull, front clip, hopefully this gives you a clearer framework. Not a brand recommendation, not a tribal loyalty, just a way to think through what your dog actually needs right now and where you are trying to go. If you found this useful, the next video worth watching is the one on loose leash walking, because that's where the real work happens, and a lot of what we covered today connects directly to it. And if you've got a specific gear question or a situation you are dealing with that didn't get covered here, drop it in the comments. We read through them, and it genuinely shapes what we cover next. Thanks for watching. If you loved this video, scan the QR code on the screen right now to subscribe and join the Pawsome Life family. Give your dog a belly rub for us, and we will see you in the next video.